In this video, we're going to be installing the Bavsound Revenant Pro Amplifier and the F33. Let's go. What's up everyone, I'm Steve and you're watching F33. Now if you like this video, give a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss when a new video drops. So this is a very exciting day because we are going to be completing the Bavsound experience by installing the Revenant Pro Amplifier in the F33. Now, as you saw in the unboxing video, the amplifier upgrade kit comes with everything you need and is completely plug and play. I am really excited to see the difference that this amplifier makes. Now, full disclosure, Bavsound did send me this amp to install and review, but no money was exchanged and Bavsound is not seeing this video before it goes live. Any opinions that I share in this video are my own thoughts and completely unbiased. Now this amplifier upgrade should be a huge improvement in terms of power as it has 1600 watts versus the stock amplifier with only 600. Now to my knowledge, this is the only plug and play amplifier upgrade for BMWs with the premium audio system. And I really like that Bavsound gave the ability to use this amp with either your stock speakers or the Bavsound Stage 1 speakers. This gives you a ton of flexibility when trying to decide what you should upgrade first. Now I'm going to be reviewing this amplifier in another video after it's installed and I've had some time to experience and tune it, but in this video we're going to be focused mainly on the install. Alright, so why don't we head out to the car, we'll get this amplifier installed. The tools needed for this install are a metal pry tool, Phillips head screwdriver, ratcheting wrench with extensions, 8, 10, and 13 millimeter sockets, 5/64 Allen, and a pick tool. The difficulty for this install is easy. The first thing you'll want to do is take out the trunk floor liner. Now you'll want to put the top in a partial open configuration so that it looks like this. This will enable us to take out the two side panels for the battery and for the amplifier. Next you want to take a trim removal tool and remove all of the fasteners holding the side trim panel in place. You'll also want to remove these trim pieces as well, those fasteners as well, so you can remove that trim piece. Once the fasteners are removed, this piece can just pull out. And then you can take and remove this side panel here. And this is the same thing you'll want to do if you want to change out the battery. And I have another video that goes over some of this. So if you ever want to change your battery, click the link in the video description and that'll take you to that video. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. All right, once you have all the fasteners removed, go ahead and remove this side of the liner. Alright, so now you should have the factory amp exposed. Looks like we have a plastic brace here, so we'll need to take that off as well. And we'll see, how that brace fits in with the new amp. Hopefully everything will fit in fine. It looks like there's a bunch of clearance here, but we'll take a look at that. Alright, and this brace is held in by just a couple fasteners here, and then you have two 10 millimeters. And it looks like there's a couple cables that are routed through here as well. So just pop those out of the holder there. Once you have those removed, you can just take and slide this out. So now we're going to remove the 10mm nut right over here. All right, and then to remove the amp, we're just going to slide it forward off of these posts. And the amp is now free. All right, the next thing that we'll want to do is remove these 3 connections. So the first one that we'll remove is the power. And that's just a tab right up on top. You squeeze it and release. The second one is the fiber optic cable. And again, that's a tab. We'll just slide that out. And then this one here is the speaker wire harness. Now this one slides out a little bit different. We're going to take and slide this to the side, which will then pull out the speaker cable. There you go, just slides out. And now the amp is free. All right, so let's get the bracket in place on the Revenant Pro. So we'll want to flip it over. And then we'll stick the bracket so that this piece here is towards the back of the amp. We'll just line up those screws and then use the provided screws from Bavsound to lock it in place. And it looks like these use a 5/16 Allen wrench. All right, so now we can take the stock amp and remove it from the bracket. This is an 8mm. Okay, and the way this slides in here is the amp has these fins and they sit on the outside and it just slides out, kind of down. That, we'll put the stock amp aside and we'll take the new amp from Bavsound and we'll slide it in. This actually takes these inner fins instead of the outer ones. So we'll just make sure that these are sitting on the outside here and push it in place. And then we'll go ahead and lock it in with that 8mm. So before we go ahead and put this in the car, let's go and flip the dip switches as well as put in the tune card. So the tune card has arrows, so make sure that those are facing up, otherwise you won't get the tune. And here's the profile dip switches. So the way this is situated here is profile 1 is driver focused with Bavsound speakers, and profile 2 is Bavsound speakers and multi-seat, and that's the one that I want. The other ones are if you have stock speakers and you want driver focused or stock speakers and multi-seat. So we're going to do profile 2, and they're listed here and tells you how to set the dip switches. So now we're ready to go ahead and throw this in the car. All right, so I just wanted to go over some of the connections here. So this power harness we're not going to use, okay? This speaker harness we will end up using. And this optical cable here, this one we need to modify a little bit. So there is, let's see if I can get a good view of it here. All right, so on the optical cable we need to modify a little bit. It's in this plug and we actually need to put in the one from Bavsound. So what you'll do is there is a locking pin here. We're just going to take our fingernail, pull that out, and then the green cables will come out. And it's super hard to show it on camera here. But here is the locking tab. We'll pull that out, and then the green cables will come out. Just like that. And we'll take the adapter that Bavsound sent, and it only goes in one way and locks in place. All right, so if you have a car with active sound design, you're going to use this harness. Now basically the way this harness is going to work is this side here is going to plug into your active sound design module, and then the one that was plugged in is actually going to plug into this side. So this is basically just going to sit right in the middle of the amp and the active sound design. You don't have to do this, but I would highly recommend it if you do. It's just going to give you a cleaner sound. Now I don't have ASD, so I'm not going to be using this, but just know this sits in between if you do. All right, so I made the connections to the battery off camera just because there's not a whole lot of room to work here with a camera, myself. The trunk is in the way, so forgive me I didn't film this, but here's kind of what we did. So we attached the positive to the accessory tab here. This is a 10 millimeter. So we just attach that. Do not put the fuse in yet. Okay, so there is no fuse in here at all. Now if we swing around, see if I can give you a good view of what's going on in here. So down here, there is a ground to the body, and that is held in place by a 13 millimeter. However, there are some cables here that are in the way. So to remove these cables, just take a pick and let me see if I can show this for you. So in the bottom here, there is a little tab. And when you depress that tab, the connection is going to slide back. So let me just show you how that works. Sorry, my head might be in the way, or my arm. So we'll take that, there's a little tab, we'll depress that, and then the connection slides back and off. And then here is another little harness here, and that just slides right off. So now you can see, hopefully back down in there, right there, there's the negative terminal for the body, and that's what we're going to connect onto. We can't connect directly to the negative terminal on the battery because of the way BMW crushes the nut on there, so we have to go to the body. This was pretty tough to get off. I'm not going to lie, it took quite a bit. It's really on there. Once you get the nut off, then you can slide on the negative terminal and put the nut back on. Once you have everything in place, this can just slide back onto that bracket. It's going to slide up, just like that. And then this can slide right back where it was. Now on the 3 Series, you would take off this rear panel on the trunk and run the cable through. On the 4 Series, however, there are these nuts that use a special box spanner to get that off. And honestly, there's really no reason to do that. There are cables that run from either side that go straight through the middle because it's a convertible. So what I did was, there's cables that route through here for the top, and they route underneath and then right through here. And so that's actually how I ran the power and ground. You can see here goes under, and then I did the same thing on the other side. And so basically this can just sit right in here, and it's not going to interfere with the floor because there's a bump here. The cable, it's perfect. So now we have it on the other side and we're ready to go. All right, so let's go ahead and get everything connected. So this cable here is going to sit in place of your factory wiring harness. This white end here is going to connect to the amp. This blue cable here is actually the remote turn-on wire. This is going to connect to the other end of your power harness, your power cables that we ran. And then this orange one is actually if you want to run another amp. And then this side here, the black side, is actually going to connect into the factory speaker wire harness. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect this white end into the Revenant Pro. And it's going to go right into here, and it should lock into place. All right, and let's go ahead and connect the power cables. Now, before you hook these up, you'll probably want to coil them a little bit just so that you have some good cable management. So I'll probably coil mine up kind of like this here. And then it's pretty simple, red to red, black to black. And make sure that these are seated in there really well. All right, so as you can see, these are seated in there really well. And then we'll take the two blue wires and connect them together. Just like that. And then we'll want to, cable manage these as well. But this side's actually going to go into the most adapter. So we'll want to hook that up first, and then we'll do some cable management. And then we'll want to take the black fiber optic cable that came with the Bavsound kit, and we're going to connect one end of it to this optical port right here. And it's keyed, so it'll only go in one way. All right, so now that we have most of the wires connected here, we will go ahead and mount the amp to the car. So what we're going to do is these tabs, just how we took it off, these tabs, there's 3 of them, are going to line up with the bracket, and then we have that 10 millimeter that is right there. So we're going to line up those tabs, slide it back so that it locks, and then we will screw on the 10 millimeter. All right, so now we get to decide where we are going to put the most adapter. Now, you can put it right on top of the amp if you want. A lot of people do that. You can put it on either side. Maybe put it on the wall right here. I'm kind of thinking about that. I don't know. I'm going to play around with that and kind of see where I want to put it. Now, depending on where you put it, depends on whether you need this extra green cable that Bavsound included. Basically, this is an optical extension cable. Now, if you connect it right on top of the amp, you're just going to use the optical cable that's coming off the factory harness and plug it right in. If you're connecting it somewhere else, you may need to use that extension cable. Now let me just go over some of the connections on this. So this is where the black cable is going to plug in that goes from the amp. That's going to connect in there. This is the power from the power harness. And then this, you're going to take this gray plug out. This is a protection, and this is where that green plug is going to go. And it only goes in one way. Now on the other side, there is some status lights and a USB port. Now I looked in the directions and there is software to update this MOST adapter, but I couldn't find the software to do that. So it may be at a later point I'm going to have to take this panel off to update this. We'll see. I mean, you'd have to do that if you were going to change the profiles or something like that. But for the time being, there's no update for it. But I'm not going to worry about that for the time being. I'm just going to go ahead and mount it. All right, so before we get everything kind of put back together and put in place, I want to just hook this up and make sure that everything works. So what we'll do is we are going to take the black cable that goes from the amp. We're going to plug that in here. Then we'll take the green cable and we will plug that in here. It only goes in one way. And then we'll take the power cable and plug that in. All right, and then the last cable to hook up before we put in the fuse is the speaker wire connector. So just line up your pins and you're going to push it in and then slide the lock. Just like that. All right, so now we're just gonna go put the fuse in and I'm gonna test the car. All right, so I just tested out the system for the first time and it sounded absolutely amazing. I could not believe it, how this amp just transformed it. Absolutely insane. We will cover that in another video where I do the before and after sound test just to see, you know, how loud they are and the clarity and all of that. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but wow, just wow. So here's how I routed it. So I ended up using the extension cables for the optical. So that just allowed me to mount it a little bit nicer. I wanted it mounted all the way over there. So I used the extension cables and it actually allowed me to kind of hide some of the cables underneath. I have my power cable kind of routed underneath and my speaker cables and stuff like that just kind of tied in the back there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of tie up the power cables and actually have them live in the middle of the car just so that there's, you know, more room on the side for the bracket and everything like that. And there's tons of room in the middle anyway. There's a big blank spot in there. So I think it's going to be probably the best bet. But this is how I ran mine. So we're going to go ahead and put the bracket back in. All right, so we're just going to slide the bracket in the same way that it came out. And that's just going to get secured on the back here by those two 10 millimeters. All right, once you have that secured, you can go ahead and lock these two cables back in place. Just like that. All right, so now we can go ahead, now that everything is tested and working, we can go ahead and put the side panel on. I'm just going to kind of roll this under here. And then this is actually going to go underneath this plastic piece, behind that plastic piece. There we go. And then we'll put on the cover for the hinge mechanics. And then we're just going to go through and put in all the plastic rivets. All right, and then we're just going to head on to the other side and do the same thing. All right, so let's put this in here. All right, so while I was putting this in, my card filled up, but basically you're just going to put in all of the plastic rivets, and that's about it. All right, so here is the power cable that was run to the other side, and it's literally just going to sit in there, and nobody's going to see it. It's not going to rattle around or anything like that. So now the final step is just to put the trunk liner in. And there you go. Completely plug and play amp install. Absolutely amazing. Bavsound outdid themselves on this. I can't wait for you to see the other video where I show you my reaction of turning this on for the first time. This thing literally blew me away. It was awesome. All right, so now that we have the side panels on, we can go ahead and close the roof. Okay, so I wanted to jump into the EQ settings a little bit. Now, you're going to want to keep the treble and bass flat. You can go up or down a couple of notches, but really you're going to want to do all the tuning in your EQ. Now, balance, that works right to left, but fader, which is front to back, that is disabled. I don't really see that as a big deal because I haven't really had a need to mess with that in the past. Now, Logic 7 Surround no longer works because that was a feature of the old amp, but the multi-seat feature or the multi-seat profile in the new amp really is that same Logic 7 Surround. It's just Bavsound's take on it. So that's what I'm going to use because I used the old Logic 7 Surround previously. Now for the EQ, you're going to want to start with everything flat and then move the sliders, you know, a little bit right to left, but really you're going to want to keep everything kind of in the center. So let's say that you want more treble, you're actually going to want to move the bass down a little bit rather than move the treble a whole lot to the right. Just kind of counteract, that way everything stays kind of in the middle and it's going to sound a lot better than just pumping something up, you know, really high and leaving out everything else where it is. Now, as far as bass, you've probably in the past had to crank the bass up to hear any of the subs, but that is not the case with this amp. Bavsound created a bass expander technology that gives you really, really punchy deep bass. You're going to be really surprised with how much bass there is, and I'll go into that more in depth in my review video, but holy cow, is there a lot of bass. So to give you a good baseline, here are the EQ settings that I'm currently using with the new amp. Now, as you saw, installing the Bavsound Revenant Pro Amplifier was really easy and only took about 45 minutes to install. I absolutely love that it's 100% plug and play, and I'm really excited to give my overall review of this amp, so stay tuned for that. Now, as always, I have put links in the description below to all the products and tools needed for this install. And if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button, smash it if that's what you're into, subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless.